It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by CartKing.com. That's cart-king.com. Their number is 877-986-7771. Give them a call. Tell them Ed Opperman sent you. Get a good deal. Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Perhaps your current business wants to add multiple point-of-sale locations across the country quickly. Maybe the facility you manage could kickstart revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. If you got a warehouse or a hospital building, doctor's office, you got a space there in the lobby, put a little coffee cart down there. CartKing.com can be the answer to your needs. CartKing.com is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile retail coffee and food carts and kiosks that money can buy. For 20 years, CartKing.com has been working with clients and corporations across America to provide indoor and outdoor carts and kiosks for any applications, those big heated ones outdoors where they sell hot dogs at the Little League stand, or fireworks, or shaved ice, those in the summertime, or the ones you see at the mall and the airport, selling kiosks, selling a coffee and a flowers, flower cart, all that kind of stuff. CartKing.com. That's cart-king.com. Give them a call, 877-986-7771. Okay, really excited about today's show. Okay, we got all this stuff in the news about good old Brett Kavanaugh, the 24-hour news station, Brett Kavanaugh. But we have an insider, Patrick Knowlton. You might recall him. He's been on our show before. I encourage you to go back to the archives and find that show. Patrick Knowlton was a witness in the Vince Foster death. He was there at the park. He was an eyewitness, not to the actual murder, but he saw the car there. Contacted the authorities right away. He had notes. Anyway, Patrick Knowlton is going to tell us about his experience with Brett Kavanaugh. So, by the way, too, he just wrote another book, too, called As If It Never Happened. And it's going to be in the Opperman Report bookstore. You can get it on Amazon. His website is FBIcoverup.com. That's FBIcover-up.com. And you can meet him in person. Be friendly when you meet him. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't be giving your whereabouts out, but you meet him in person. You know what I mean? Syracuse, New York, Palm Springs, and Tampa, Florida. He's going to be doing book signings. Okay. I just had so much trouble getting him on the phone. I was worried. I said, maybe I got to him. Patrick Knowlton, are you there?
I'm here. Nice to hear you, Ed.
Yeah, you too, man. Thank you so much for getting a hold of me.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, I guess the best place to start is how I met Brett Kavanaugh, and to give you a little background on to how this all came about.
Before we get to that, I
spent a lot of time with the guy.
Why don't you remind the audience about who is Patrick Knowlton? Tell us about your life and what you're doing. I know you're down in Mexico.
Yes. Yes. Right now I'm on vacation, so you caught me at a good time. But just a little background information. I currently work as a healthcare consultant, so I'm doing healthcare work, trying to hold some of these hospitals together that are bleeding out because of lack of money and all that kind of stuff that's going on. So I spend a lot of time working with medical staff and leaders. How I got involved in the Vince Foster case. I was heading back home to a house in Virginia when I pulled into Fort Marcy Park where Vince Foster's body was found at 6 o'clock in the evening. I got there at 4:30, about the time of death. I went to relieve myself. There was a guy in the park who had his car backed in. There was only two cars in the parking lot, a brown Honda with Arkansas license plate, an older car, and then this other newer kind of bluish-gray car backed in. The guy sitting in it looked Hispanic, Middle Eastern. I couldn't really tell. I did my thing, and I got back in the car and left, and next day I heard that Vince Foster was found dead in the park, and they believed his body, they believed he died around 4:30. I was like, wow, I was there at 4:30. You got to be kidding. So I called my wife now. She was my girlfriend then. She was working on her PhD. And I said, I was at the park where they found this guy's body. What should I do? She says, well, take notes, write everything you remember, write everything down. So I did. I wrote everything I remember about the guy and the cars and what I saw inside the cars. So anyway, I reported that to the police and the park police. That's who was investigating the death of Vince Foster. And then I went about my life, and I told everybody I knew. I said, "Can't imagine I was at that park urinating, and there's Vince Foster, the president's best friend," which isn't true, but they would say his best friends. But his body was in the park, and I was there. Can you imagine that? And so I told lots of people. And then I kind of went off and did my thing, where it was rebuilding a house down in Virginia, and I got a phone call from a reporter about 18 months after this whole thing blew over. Well, let me take a step back. So I was interviewed by Robert Fisk's Office of Independent Counsel. He was actually called a special prosecutor. He wasn't actually an independent counsel. He was a special prosecutor looking into the death of Foster. So I met with Larry Monroe, Bill Columdale, who were the FBI agents working on that case. And I was in their office twice, interviewed about the cars that I saw and things that I observed in the park, and gave them all the information they possibly could. And then they wrote the Fisk report, and the Fisk report, of course, said I couldn't identify the man I saw in the park, which I said I could. Had nothing really to add to the investigation, which I know I did, because the car that was in the park did not belong to Vince Foster, even though it had Arkansas license plates. And they just kind of falsified my whole testimony. So now the reporter, Great Evans, gives me a call at my house in Virginia, and says, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "About what?" He said, "The death of Vincent Foster." Now, like I say, a year and a half had passed, and I'm like, "It was a suicide. You know, what more can I say?" He said, "Can I get some information? I have your interviews with the FBI. Would you like to see them?" So I said, "Sure." So this was in 1994. I was interviewed by the FBI and the Robert Fisk people. So I go to his office. I meet him. I wanted to meet him in an office public place. I had no idea what his game was. And he starts showing me the reports. And I see that they're falsified. And I'm saying to myself, this is a lie. I didn't say this. This is not true. I didn't, So he's taking all these notes. Actually, I think he was tape recording me. But anyway, in Washington, D.C., you can do that. He writes an article for the Sunday London Sunday Telegraph, excuse me. And says to me, I'm gonna run a story about you for the article to Ken Starr. Now Ken Starr's now taken over the investigation of Whitewater, and he said, "I'm going to write an article that you've never been called to the grand jury to give your testimony about what you saw at the park." So he writes this article, and it comes out on Sunday. It arrives in America on Tuesday, and my girlfriend and I walked down to the paper stand to get the newspaper and see what article he wrote. So before he left, so this is an interesting part, a little twist to the story. He, Ambrose Evans Pritchard, calls me on the phone on Sunday. He's on his way back to London. He says, "I hope I haven't put your life in danger by what I'm printing in the London Sunday Telegraph." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Your life may be in danger." I'm like, "What?" I had no idea what he was talking about. I said to my girlfriend, I said, "This guy's kind of wacky, So anyway, that Tuesday afternoon, I get the paper, and it's a full page spread in this Telegraph, this huge newspaper that circulated around the world. My picture with Hillary Clinton is in the column, and Vince Foster and Bill, and it was shocking to see my name in big bold letters with all these other people. It couldn't make sense. But then I read the article, and I was taken aback by it. So we go back home, and the next afternoon I get a phone call, and it's FBI agent who's working for Ken Starr, and he says, "Mr. Nolte, my name is Agent Bransford. Russell Bransford, I'm going to come over to your home here and deliver a subpoena for you." I said, "A subpoena for what?" He goes, "Appeared before the Whitewater grand jury in the death of Vincent Foster." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, nobody's even talked to me. I haven't been interviewed by you guys. I mean, you pulled me before the grand jury to do what? I mean, usually you interview people, then you go before the grand jury. Usually that's the way I hear it's done anyway." So he comes over, delivers me a subpoena. The next half hour after he leaves, my girlfriend and I go out to take a walk, and right at that moment, I started getting harassed. People start following us around on the street. People glaring at me as they walk towards me with these really kind of stern kind of faces. Big guys, they're obviously military or FBI stringers or something. Just, muscle guys with crew cuts. And my girlfriend at the time was saying to me, look at these guys, look at you, And she wasn't somebody who would really pay attention to that kind of stuff either. So anyway, this happens. This goes on. This harassment went on for the whole evening. Everywhere I went, they came to my house. They knocked on my doors. They were outside the front of my building. Just guys and goons hanging around. And the next day, I was supposed to appear before the grand jury. So when I go to appear before the grand jury, I get to meet Mr. Brett Kavanaugh. And Brett Kavanaugh is there, and I had no introduction to him whatsoever. He and John Bates is another federal judge now, working on. He was actually the special judge. I can't think what title they gave him now, but he was the secret court judge for a while, allowing people to. He was okaying all the surveillance of American citizens. He was okaying all that kind of stuff, giving the FBI and any law enforcement agency, CIA, whoever it may be, the right to phone taps and things like that. Anyway, so I get into the grand jury, and Brett Kavanaugh, young guy, I guess he was 29. I was just like 35 myself, 40 maybe, and he was a young guy, and the guy, John Bates, sat behind me, and they started asking me questions, and I start, off right away saying, I want to know who these people follow me around. Why am I being harassed? I mean, what am I being harassed for? Who's harassing me? So I'm asking them all these questions. They get very irritated. They say to me, you're not here to ask us questions. We're here to ask you questions. So the gallery had about 27, I think it was 27 people that were the grand jurors, 22, 27, stuff like that. And he starts asking me questions, allegedly, tell me about this alleged stuff. Tell me about what you saw in the park. Tell me about the car you saw. So I tell him about the brown car I saw, the older car I saw, with the contents, the briefcase and the suit jacket in that car. I tell him about the guy in the other car acting very suspicious. So they really just they asked me if I had media coverage. Was I writing a book? Was I getting paid for the story? They were just trying to smear me a little bit here and there. So they asked me to step out of the room so the jurors could ask questions. And I thought, well, the jurors are going to ask questions. Why can't I stay in the room? But I go out, leave the room. About 10 minutes later, they call me back in, and I sit down back in the seat, and Brett Kavanaugh gets a note handed to him by John Bates, who John Bates is sitting directly behind me. And Brett Kavanaugh opens up this piece of paper and says, "Here's some questions from the jurors, from the people seated here." I said, "Okay." Did the man at the park stare at you? I said, "Yes." Did the man at the park pass you a note? I said, "No." Did the man in the park point a gun at you? I said, "No." Then he said, "Did the man in the park touch your genitals?" I looked at this guy. I was like, "What?" Even the grand jurors were like, "Oh," they were like gasping for air. Like, it was just a shocking question. And that was the end of my testimony. I mean, then they said they were done. And I was just like enraged. I mean, I walked out of that room, and there was my lawyer, John Clark, just out there. I said, "Can you imagine what this guy asked me?" He asked me if the guy in the park touched my genitals. I said, "How in the world could somebody ask a question like that?" So,
well, let me stop you there for a second. Who is John Bates? You said John Bates handed him the note. Who is John Bates?
John Bates is the secret judge I was telling you about.
Okay.
All the subpoenas out and all that kind of stuff. So John Bates was a lawyer too with Ken Starr's office, right along with Brett Kavanaugh. So John Bates, yes, that's who he was. So anyway, I step out. I tell my lawyer right away. He's like, "You got to be kidding me! They don't ask questions like that in the grand jury. That's unbelievable." So he writes a letter immediately to Ken Starr's office, and so Ken Starr denies that question was asked. They said they went through the grand jury transcript. There's nothing in the transcript. But luckily, we continue to do research on this case, and it's been 25 years now. But we go to the archives and we get boxes of documents, and luckily we found a document recently that pretty much clarifies that not only was Ken Starr lying when he said the question wasn't asked, but also Brett Kavanaugh denying he'd asked such a question. We found a memo from Kavanaugh that said, I didn't ask him if the guy touched his genitals, but I did ask him a sexual question. And my question to Brett Kavanaugh is, what did you ask me, Brett, if it wasn't, did the guy touch my genitals? So anyway, Brett knew there was going to be a story written about that. And he went to great lengths to get this reporter not to write about the genitals. So what he actually did is he violated grand jury secrecy rules by having somebody on his behalf reach out to the press not to write the story about the genitals. So now you're not supposed to talk about anything. I could talk about anything I want because I was in the grand jury, but the prosecutor, anybody sitting in there are sworn to secrecy. So Kavanaugh pretty much lied. So what we did, and my story's long and convoluted, and it's detailed, and so my website has my whole story on it. So I don't want to go into the whole thing, but all the harassment. I mean, I was harassed unbelievably, not only before the grand jury but after the grand jury. I mean, fouled, and we had our phones tapped. We had a guy come into my apartment, my lawyer's office. They found sound devices putting it up in our where our lights were, and yeah, it was kind of a crazy thing. And I think that the what made me significant, and I'll go back to Brett Kavanaugh in a minute, but what made me significant to the case of Vince Foster's death is that I was a witness who proved that Vince Foster did not drive his car to that park and shoot himself. His car was not in that park. And what we also found at the archives, and this is at our website too, and Brett Kavanaugh, again, you can hear him on tape being interviewed by Reed Irvine, who's an old conservative guy who's not passed on, but you can hear Kavanaugh in his own words saying, well, you know, that brown car Knowlton saw as a problem. Everybody saw the same car. And Reed says, everybody saw the brown car? He says, yeah, pretty much.
Well, not only that, I just listened to that Reed Irvine phone conversation, and Kavanaugh, especially toward the end, is kind of giggling, right? Yeah, well, that's what the report says, you know, and then he says, you're not taping me, are you?
I know. That's the best line of all. I hope people go listen to that. That is one of the most telling tapes of Brett Kavanaugh being uncomfortable. And when they call him he's a smart man, I'm sorry. I spent time with this guy. He wasn't all that smart. But anyway, so after the grand jury and my lawyer complaining about treatment, now they start bringing me to the OIC office to interview me. Now they want to get into this car thing because I really was very adamant about what I saw at that park, and I wasn't going to change my mind no matter what. I know what I saw. So I probably met with Brett, Jim Clement. Jim Clement's a very well-known. This is interesting too about the Foster death. They had Jim Clement was the child abduction, sexual abuse investigator for the FBI. He was the lead guy in the Foster case, which I always found very strange.
You're right, and today he does like a podcast. He's a frequent guest talking about serial killers and things like that.
Yeah, he was a profiler. Yeah, but he was a profiler for sexual predators. See, right. This is the other thing that people aren't aware of. And what he was doing in the Foster case, I have no idea. But anyways, after meeting, I met with Brett several times. He was very uneasy every time I met with him. There was Jim Clement, R. Jeff Green, who was a retired DC homicide investigator. I met with these guys several times. I went out to Fort Marcy Park with them. I spent a lot of time with these guys. They were I don't know if they believed me. I don't know what their story was. I mean, they spent so much time with me. I assume they must have believed what I was saying because the amount of time I spent with them. But in the end, I guess all they were trying to do is try to fill every hole that they could find in my story just so they could write the report to say he committed suicide and he wasn't murdered. But I can just tell your listeners right now, this man did not shoot himself. The gun that he had in his hand, the gun that was found at the scene was not a gun owned by the Foster family. There was no fingerprints on the gun that Vince Foster was found with. There was no fingerprints on the car they alleged was Vince Foster's car. There's no identifiable fingerprints on the car anywhere, which I find very bizarre. I don't know.
We did a full 2 hours. Yeah, we did a full 2 hour detailed interview on this, which even only still touches, barely touches everything.
Yeah.
I interviewed a lot of people around you too at that time. I did a whole series of shows on the Vince Foster. So we go back to the archives. I'm going to make a whole playlist on YouTube just for the whole Vince Forster's thing. Let's take a little commercial break, okay? And then we're going to be back with more Patrick Knowlton, a super insider, really, because what we're getting at here is that Brett Kavanaugh worked for the Starr Commission, and he basically was not basically he was he was involved in the cover-up of the Vince Foster death. You know what I mean? And now he's somehow being trotted out by these right-wingers who hated the Clintons. What's going on? We got to figure this out. Yeah, because it's a little too complicated. We'll be right back with more of Patrick Knowlton. Again, his book is As If It Never Happened, which is his life story about growing up, his what made him the man he is today. We'll get into that. His website is fbicover-up.com. Again, book signings, you can find them in Syracuse, New York City, Palm Springs, and Tampa, Florida coming up. So keep an eye out for that. If you go to his website, I'm sure it'll be on there. We'll be right back with more of Patrick Knowlton after these messages.
Hey, you, podcast listener. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. Take the blue pill. You wake up in your bed and go back to listening to mundane podcasts that won't challenge your religious beliefs and your so-called truths about reality, the universe, and consciousness. Take the red pill. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast, hosted by Mark Anthony Peterson, and he will show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Event Horizon takes a walk into the paranormal with a splash of conspiracy. It's the podcast that would be born if David Icke and the X-Files had a baby. Subscribe to the Event Horizon podcast by Mark Anthony Peterson on Spreaker, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Stitcher, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Remember, all we are offering is the truth, nothing more.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. Order today at PureSoapFlakes.com, greenhome.com, Amazon.com, or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
Tina Helmuth is writing an ongoing series of fact-fiction books that boldly takes on today's most heinous crimes: the abduction, sexual trafficking, and cannibalization of our children. Suffer the Little Children, The Wrath of the Father, and Unbreakable. Deeply researched and mixed with the supernatural, good versus evil makes these thrillers hard to put down, shining a light on the root cause of these crimes and introducing a spiritual solution. Justice will be served. Available at lulu.com in paperback or ebook.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with Patrick Knowlton, who's an insider with an eyewitness to the Vince Foster case. His website is FBI-cover-up.com. And his book is As If It Never Happened. It's a brand new book about the story of his life. Now, Patrick, your first impression of Brett Kavanaugh, we've both met a lot of lawyers and judges and stuff. Does he come off like someone who's like a legal scholar, like a constitutional expert?
No, I mean, no, not at all. And actually, I was pretty shocked that it was his first case he ever prosecuted, or ever investigated, was the Vince Foster case. You could tell he was very young, very green, and I saw him over the years. I would go to different events where he would be speaking at Yale or something, and I didn't go there to harass him. I went there to ask him questions, along with my lawyer and Hugh Turley, and one of our researchers. And he never really seemed like the brightest bulb in the box to me. And as he matured over the years, he's a 53-year-old man now. Has he gained some experience? Probably. I mean, he's been on the circuit court now, the appellate court, for 12 years. But, you know, I don't know. I would just say I'm very surprised he's in this place to become a Supreme Court justice, and I would quite frankly think it'd be a shame if it happens. Not an honest person, I can tell you. He lied about me. So here's a couple things that people should know. First of all, he denied he asked me that genitals question. I would have absolutely no reason whatsoever to make up a story like that. I was very innocent through this whole thing. I would never have walked out and made a story up to tell my lawyer. My lawyer knew me well enough to know that I wouldn't do that either. He denied he asked that question. That's an outright lie. He denied that he leaked grand jury information. That's an outright lie. And there's other things that he's done along the way. So, you know, when I was subpoenaed to go before the Whitewater grand jury, he was the one who signed my subpoena. It signed Brett Kavanaugh. Go to our website, take a look. The whole Brett Kavanaugh page there, by the way, you might want to go take a look at it because it gives some very good information there about him. But he's the one to sign my subpoena. Subpoenas for grand jury witnesses are secret. Somehow, it was leaked out through that office, and I can only assume it was Brett. He was the one in charge. That I was going to appear before the grand jury, and then this harassment started. He had to be complicit in that some way. I mean, complacent in that in some way. Anyway.
Wait, let me just make a point too. Your complaint about that question about the genitals, this isn't something you're just revealing today. You've been talking about this for 20, 30 years, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's never gotten any. It was never reported. And that goes right along with the 20-page appendix that was added to Starr's report. Now, your listeners may notice from the last time I talked, maybe not, but again, you know, this has never been covered either. We had an appendix with 20 points that are 20 pages that laid out every point that proved that Vince Foster did not drive to that park and kill himself. And the three judges who hired Ken Starr to do this investigation ordered him over his 9-page objection to attach this appendix, which proves a cover-up by the OIC and the FBI. And those judges, and one of them particularly, Judge Butzner, said, if we don't attach this information to the report, we may be charged as conspirators in the near future too. This the judge wrote that. It's at our website in his own handwriting. And one of the other judges, Judge Fay, says, well, let's let Knowlton's words speak for themselves. So the last 20 pages of Ken Starr's report on the death of Vincent Foster counters every point they try to make that he killed himself. So, I mean, people should go take a look at that. It's never been reported. And the only time I ever gets any legs when I talk about it on the radio, when we do radio shows or a TV appearance or something. But so Brett's not an honest guy. I mean, I'm going to say that right now. You know, he's just not an honest person.
Well, let me ask you this.
I have to believe that these women aren't lying either. Questionable, maybe they could be questionable, but you know, okay. I'm not going to say nothing happened to him. That's for sure.
Before we get to the women. Now, there's a feeding frenzy, right? The media is going crazy. They're trying to get anybody. They'll talk to some guy through ICE. You know, there's an ICE incident. Right. How come? How am I the lucky guy that got Patrick Knowlton on my show? How come you're not booked 24/7?
Well, I don't know. So my lawyer is still my lawyer, John Clark, great guy.
Yeah.
He's a great civil rights lawyer. There you go. He put together a letter on my behalf. He wrote it, make sure the thing was legally sound and everything like that. And it was distributed to every member of the committee. And John offered me up to come and testify about my experience with Brett Kavanaugh and his lying. The only person who brought something up about grand jury secrecy, and it was about me, was Dianne Feinstein.
Oh, really?
She asked him if he'd ever. Yeah, she asked him if something about it. I wasn't in town to see a TV, so I don't know exactly what was asked, but she did ask him something about if he violated grand jury secrecy rules. It was based on the letter that my attorney sent, and he said no, he never had. But that's an outright lie. He did. I mean. We can prove it. We have papers that can prove it. But we offered, and then the Democrats from the committee, I can't think of his name, who it was. Whoever's the head of the Democratic committee for these hearings contacted John Clark, my lawyer, and asked him, "Where's the rest of the pages?" And John says, "Well, they're at the archives, or they got them here." But they apparently wanted to get them directly from the archives to make sure they weren't falsified or something. But I'll tell you something. You just can't go to the archives and find the stuff that we found. You have to be a scholar on the Vince Foster case. You have to have been in those archives many times to know what boxes you've gone through. We photocopied everything, or photographed everything we took from the archives, because we stopped taking copies. We just started photographing things. It was so much faster and much more efficient. And so, I mean, for them to go to the archives and try to find the documents that we had already, and they didn't want to take them from us, which I thought was baloney, because they all have there's a slug that they give you. They call it a slug. It's that they give you at the archives when you photograph something. You have to have this slug that proves this document came from the archives. You can't get it anywhere else separate the archives, but apparently the Democrats didn't want to take our papers, didn't want to trust us on that. And the Republicans never asked us a word. So there you go. Never said, bring this guy in, because I would have went in. I mean, I think it's relevant that we can prove that Kavanaugh lied. I mean, he lied as a young guy. I'm sure he's not lying today. I'm sure he is lying today.
Have you contacted the FBI? Because now they're doing this further background check. Have you tried? Have you bothered?
No. But I'll tell you something that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So I tried to get my FBI report because they surveilled me, they followed me, and I was told, my lawyer has the letter, that I cannot get my FBI file released from 50 years from the date it was put in the archives. I cannot see my own FBI file. Nobody can. So I have another 22 years before I can get a look at it. And you know why? You know why that is? Because they illegally surveilled me. They wiretapped they did all these things, I think, illegally. And interesting.
So now the media won't touch this story now because it would bring up the whole Vince Foster story. Right,
exactly. They don't. Nobody wants to go near that. And and I think that both sides of the aisle, at least back then, I know most of the people now, it's 25 years now. Some of those people are dead or retired, but I mean, it was pretty well known, and amongst both parties, don't get involved in that. And because I think my theory on the Foster death was he was not a very good guy. He may have been a spy. He may have been working for the Israelis. There was a software program that was available. At the time, he was representing the company through the Rose Law Firm, and they believe he may have stole one of the software programs and sold it to Israel. The software program was simply this: it was tracking bank accounts in Switzerland. It was a Swiss bank account app that they had. They were able to see who was coming and going in and out of these banks, Americans, foreigners, what money was going where, and the theory is that, the best one we come up with anyway, is that he probably stole that software from the company, Systematics, sold it to Israel, and that may be why he was killed in the end, because he was kind of, I guess you'd call him a spy in some ways, counterintelligence or something. But and we do believe he was probably murdered by CIA. He's probably a CIA hit. can't prove any of that stuff, unfortunately, but that's pretty much what we've, after all these years of 23 years of looking into this guy's death, I mean, I don't think there's any better experts at it than myself, you, Charlie, and John Clark, my attorney.
Right, and like we said, all that information you can find on FBIcover-up.com. And we did a long 2-hour show about that, too, as well, very detailed, as much as you can get into in 2 hours, too. It's a lifetime. Now, you said you've had other interactions, though, with Brett Kavanaugh afterwards. You would go and confront him at speaking engagements and stuff?
Right. We go to different speaking engagements if he was one of the lead speakers on a panel, and we'd ask questions. And because what our goal was to get somebody to say, okay, we didn't do a very good investigation in the Foster case, and what we learned over the years too is, you know, this goes to the Brett Kavanaugh today even. You know, the FBI, we were told the FBI is never going to embarrass their colleagues. So the first investigation done by Robert Fisk was really a whitewash investigation. And then they have Ken Starr bring in FBI agents, happens to be the same FBI agents that did the first investigation. And so they're not going to find anything new. Now, the same thing's happening with Brett Kavanaugh right now. These people that are being interviewed by the FBI, Brett's already been vetted, or for, I guess that's the right word to use, by the FBI, investigated by them 2 times already. Once for his job at the appellate court, now this time for the Supreme Court. Now the same FBI agents or the same agencies coming back in to investigate him, do you think they're going to find something new? Do you think they're going to say, oh, our colleagues missed it? No, that's not how the FBI works. They do not embarrass their colleagues. They just don't. And so if they come up with anything, I'll be shocked. I mean, if the FBI comes up with anything new or ends up saying that Brett's guilty or whatever, I'll be totally shocked.
Even though it does seem that even like every day we wake up and another witness seems to pop. Sorry?
Another what?
Even though like every day we wake up and it seems like another woman's come forward or there's another person the media's finding, you know?
Right. You know, it's interesting, too. I don't know if your listeners know this, but Brett Kavanaugh wrote that salacious report on Monica Lewinsky. I don't know if anybody's if you've ever seen that, you'd be shocked. It's like a porno book or something. It's very detailed. And that was one of Brett's writings, too, which I thought was interesting. He seems to have this penchant for descriptive sexual activity or something. I don't know what it is, but he did write that Monica Lewinsky report.
Listen, if his best friend for a really long time, part of his life was this guy, Mark Judge, everyone agrees about Judge and his behavior. And
Right. Yeah, so, you know, like I say with these women, too, I would never say ever that nothing happened to them. Of course something happened to them. The problem with, I think, Dr. Ford is she has very bad memory, which is not good. And she has some connections in her family, which were a little surprising. And I don't know what to think of how that can impact anything, but it is surprising that her family members are CIA or something like that.
Yeah, it seems to be true. Yeah, no one's denying it, but then again, no one in the mainstream is bringing it up.
Yeah, I wonder what significance that could have.
And this Avenatti witness too, you know, she's got several security clearances, and Avenatti is suing my client right now, so I'm sort of involved in that. And Avenatti because I'm involved with Keith Davidson and Gina Rodriguez, all the people behind Stormy Daniels and stuff. And it's been my whole So Avenatti is not a total flake where he's just going to bring in a fake witness and swear out an affidavit information that he knows is false. He is a legitimate. Yeah.
Oh, he is. See, I didn't have that take on him actually, and because he was. So what's your thing with, just real quick, I don't know anything about Stormy Daniels and you. What's this?
What this is, her first attorney was Keith Davidson, and her first agent was Gina Rodriguez. Gina Rodriguez was my agent, and I've worked for Keith Davidson. He's been my client for years on cases like the Charlie Sheen case and all that stuff, you know, because he does all those kind of Hollywood kind of cases. So, and Avenatti came in and he was representing Stormy Daniels now, and he sued Keith Davidson saying that he misrepresented Stormy Daniels, which is totally false. I know these people. But the thing is though, that Avenatti is a serious, legit lawyer. He's not some flaky guy. And he's not going to... Yeah.
I think the media play him up as a doofus or something. That's what that's the take. Every time I see something about him, it's like, oh, this guy can't be for real. I mean...
Just imagine they're saying that he can't be for real because he represents the ex-girlfriend of the President of the United States. Stormy Daniels.
That's pretty good.
She may be involved in pornography, the pornography business, but so are a lot of people. Yeah.
Unbelievable. So that's interesting. I didn't know that you were about all that. You had people that you know about.
Yeah.
Small world, isn't it?
It's a scary small world.
Hey, how's your newsletter going?
Well, it's not.
How's your newsletter, the Opperman Report?
It's not actually a newsletter. What it is, it's a members section on the website where there's exclusive interviews on there, and there's also kind of court documents too. We have all the lawsuits, the Trump University lawsuit documents on there. All kinds of stuff on Jeffrey Epstein, which connects to this too as well, because his attorney was was Ken Starr again.
Yeah,
this bizarre connection, small world, like you say.
Yeah. I met Ken Starr.
Okay.
I was speaking in Boston, and so was he. And there was kind of a strange thing. I was in the lobby of the hotel. This is 10 years ago now, but long after he was out of the independent office of business. And I saw him come in this cowboy hat and this cowboy boots. And I was like, darn, that's Ken Starr. And I was at the front desk, and I walk away. I go up to my room. And I put some stuff in my room, and I came out, and there he is getting into the room next door to me. I was just like, oh, can't be for real. He's sleeping next door to me, Ken Starr. So I didn't bother him. I waited for breakfast, and the next morning we were at we were being put up by the Boston University, so they put us in you can eat breakfast privately upstairs. And it was just he and I in the breakfast room, and I said, Mr. Starr, do you remember me? He looks at me and says, no, I don't. I said, Patrick Knowlton. And honest to God, his face just dropped. Like, that was really a pain in that guy's neck. I'm pretty sure of it. And he said, oh, yes. You never know who you're going to run into. It's really true. I was told that once. You never know who you're going to run into. And I said, well, I'm going to do you a favor. So I'm going to pray for you because you lied. You lied about me. You lied about everything in the Foster case. So I'm going to pray for you that you go to heaven. Some way you get to heaven because you're such a good Christian man. I walked out of the room. I had my picture taken first with him before I walked out of the room. That's on the internet. The picture of me and Ken Starr together in Boston.
It is a small world. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this now. There can be no doubt that the Ken Starr investigation was a cover-up of the Foster murder, like you say. Brett Kavanaugh was involved in this cover-up. Why is it that these right-wingers, these QAnon conspiracy groups, these bizarre people who would agree with you about Vince Foster would then be supporting the guy who was part of the cover-up? How does that work?
I can only say that there's only probably two people on that panel, Feinstein. No, Miss Graham. I guess a few of them were there. I think they're so removed from the whole Foster thing that because, again, everybody was told not to talk about it, that they don't even bring it up in the hearings too much. I think they brought it up once in the hearings, mentioned that he was on the investigator, but everybody steers clear of that. They just steer clear of it. Like I say, both aisles know, both sides of the chamber knows why Vince Foster was killed. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's pretty well known. They know, and people are told not to go near it. Don't go near it. Don't write about it. Don't report it. Don't, and Brett was part of that. Brett's part of the larger cover-up. And again, it goes to his, if they're talking about if this man is honest or not, I'm going to say again, he lied about my grand jury appearance. I'm 100% sure. that he's the one who leaked that I was going to be, or maybe had me harassed. I don't know what kind of power he had, but he certainly was the one who knew I was being subpoenaed the next day to go before the grand jury, and I was harassed.
Right.
He denied having any part of that. I asked him right in the grand jury, were you part of this? He denied that. And, of course, he denied that he asked me that question in the grand jury, and we have notes now, handwritten notes from Hickman Ewing, who was Ken Starr's assistant, talking about, Brett wanted to get this, those things don't have it put in the paper, let's get rid of it. Interesting stuff. So he's not a very forthcoming, honest person. I mean, and even when we went to confront him in these events that he was at, one time he said to me, please don't do this. My mom and dad are here.
Oh my God.
I was like, what? You're here speaking with a group of lawyers and your parents are in the audience, and you ask me, don't ask you embarrassing questions because your parents are here? I mean, he is an only child, I guess, but I do think he has a lot of flaws, and I think, I said this, and my wife's a very liberal woman too, and she thinks it's a shame that these women have to go through what they're going through to get something off their mind, off their chest, things that traumatize them, and then to be attacked on the other side of it too, for coming forward. And I just think that.
What do you make of the whole?
Nothing's going to come out of it. I think he's going to slide in. I think that's my.
It sounds like he knows where the bodies are buried, literally. Now, what do you make of his tantrum and his meltdown? Have you seen that in his personality before? The crying. Oh, did I lose you? I just think we just lost our buddy here. Let me pull him back up. I hate when this happens, man. We had trouble establishing this call. I got the weirdest dial tone when I was first trying to catch you. Patrick Knowlton. The book is As If It Never Happened, and his website is fbicover-up.com. I hope we don't lose him altogether because he is vacationing in Mexico. Are you there?
Ed?
Yeah.
Yes. My phone dropped out. I'm sorry about that.
That's not your fault. I tell you, it's been a weird all morning. Now, the question I was asking you, though, when the call dropped was, what do you make of his tantrum, his crying, the drinking the water, his temperament? What'd you make of that?
Well, that, people who scream the loudest are sometimes guilty.
Right.
I thought being on the defense like that was really a very bizarre behavior, especially for somebody of his rank and file, the second highest court in the land. He should have more composure than that. And, that whole, he claims to be this great Catholic, I'm a Catholic too, but he claims to be this great person who's prays with his daughters every night. And I question people who come forward and speak that loudly about things like that. I question their character. It's not necessary for anybody to know that. I mean, that's personal, private, family stuff, I think. And so I think his whole behavior, whole demeanor was very bizarre to me. And I thought, again, my mother used to say, well, those who are guilty scream the loudest.
Now, I'm watching right now on CNN. They got a picture of Kavanaugh, and they're showing a clip of him crying and screaming. And they got his wife in the background. And have you ever met her before? Because she had the look on her face is a look of shame. That's not. Yeah.
I did meet her. I met her before she was actually married to Brett. I was at the George Bush White House with some people. I was invited with a group of people, and went to meet the president. And he was the fourth president I got to meet, so that was pretty incredible. It was Brett's future wife that was his right-hand person, and she come out and introduced herself to us. And that's my only interaction with her. She was a little bit younger then than she was today. But, I think that, it's going to be tough being a wife and really hearing these things that she, and I always think about these sexual predators too, when they get caught and doing these bizarre things. I mean, somebody must know. Like a girlfriend or an ex-girlfriend must know that these behaviors exist in people. I mean, like Brett, I can believe he is a bully. I can believe he is a mean drunk, and I can believe that. He just seems like that kind of person. I do believe he's pretty spoiled. His father's multimillionaire, and his mother a judge and only child, and grew up in a very affluent neighborhood and pretty much got everything he needed. So, I mean, yeah, he probably had quite a chip on his shoulder, I guess, growing up. And but people do come to his defense. People who know him better than I do. I knew him in his later years when he was in his profession, but I do see people come to his defense. You know, all those women from high school signed that letter saying he was nothing but a gentleman and this and that. But
yeah, but if you look at their Twitter accounts, some of these women knew about these allegations way back in July, and they were talking about it behind the scenes. Some of these women who signed that letter. So, and there's even some talk too. And NBC had a report yesterday about how there's texts, how he was contacting some of these women trying to get them to come on, write statements for him. So he knew before all this became public, these allegations became public, and he was in the background talking to these people.
Yeah.
Patrick, we only got about 10 minutes left. Do you want to tell us about your book, As If It Never Happened?
Yeah. So I grew up like most people in the United States, having a dysfunctional family. I don't know anybody had the perfect life. I think some of the children this day and age probably have a better life than you and I had growing up. I hope that's the case anyway. But this book is based on my upbringing in a small town in Warners, New York, outside of Syracuse. It was a farm community, and I write about the things that happened to me, and some of the things that did happen were at later in life kind of hilarious. Like one of the bullies in my town, we had several bullies around, used to hang me over the railroad bridge by my ankles, and as trains would pass into the bridge. So, I mean, there was a lot of terrifying things like that took place in a rural community. You had no one to go and tell. There was nobody to tell. Couldn't tell your parents you weren't supposed to be in the bridge. You couldn't. So all these traumatic things had happened. So I write about things like that happened. And it tells the history of a time during the Cold War, too. So it's, I don't know how old you are, but we had this thing when I was in elementary school, is the duck and cover. Waiting in Syracuse, New York, we were like number 10 on the list to be bombed by the Russians during the Cold War because of all the manufacturing was there. So in school, we had to dive under our desk and cover our heads, and as a practice for a bomb coming up, the bomb drills that took place. So it's things like that and the trauma that caused me. And then I was in a home for a while. My mother was very ill my whole life, so they put us in a foster home, and it was very traumatic and very abusive. So it's all stories about that. Everybody who's read it so far has given me great reviews, and it's doing well on Kindle right now. And hard copies are moving slower, but Kindle seems to be where everybody goes to get their books. So they hit the 3,000 mark on the Kindle yesterday.
Oh, very good.
I'm signing off for. Yeah, we're on Kindle for 5 days now. So,
well, you definitely have you have the gift of a storyteller for sure. You can definitely present the story well, and like you said, it's a very well received. As If It Never Happened. You can find it also too in the Opperman Report bookstore. And you were saying that this growing up like that is what gave you the courage, and I guess kind of the craziness too, to go up against the federal government, the FBI.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was always searching for the truth, and you'll see if you read this book. I had to build courage to escape a lot of these things that I was going through, and I was terrified by the bombs dropping, and my mother being home and bed sick, and I was fatherless, and it's a pretty good read. So if you love memoirs, this could be the book for you. Good story. It's a good American history story too. Actually, talks about hobos. I lived in a town right near the railroad tracks, so we had hobos coming off the trains, and it's a whole different time of life, a whole different time of life. So, well, thanks for having me on, Ed, and I appreciate it very much.
No, Patrick, thank you so much.
If anything else comes up about Brett, I'll come back on.
I was just going to say that if anything comes up, give me a call, put you right back on the air.
Yeah, I will. I will let you know. If you get the opportunity, get called before the committee. I doubt it, but you never know. My lawyer works on it every day.
Patrick Knowlton, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed. Have a great day.
Good night. Okay, there we have Patrick Knowlton. The book is As If It Never Happened. You could find it on Amazon. Like I said, it'll be up on the Opperman Report bookstore. His website is fbicover-up.com. Now, we did 2 hours of Patrick Knowlton about his whole story about Vince Foster, the Starr investigation, the cover-up. We spent a good, solid, sober, lengthy, detailed interview. He was just saying off there, he thought it was the best one that anybody ever did with him. So we covered that in depth. I'm going to place in the members section this recording of Brett Kavanaugh talking to Reed Irvin, where he's giggling about, the report and the star, yeah. I know. Well, that's what the report says. Well, we're going to stick by the report. And then he says at the end, you're not recording, are you? Okay, because, you get these are conversations you have people in criminal cases and stuff like that back and forth. And one side, you guys guilty. Well, yeah, but, oh, you're not recording. Okay, you know what I mean? So, and this, he fell for that. This guy's no Supreme Court judge on any level. But the whole thing is just so... I've been holding back on doing a commentary on this thing. I tried to do it Friday night, but I told you I had that long day with that client who was just a basket case. I'm watching somebody die right before my eyes of drug addiction and just spiraling out of control. And I had to go bail her out of jail and take her down to the pretrial supervision. So I couldn't do my commentary Friday night after dealing with all this Brett Kavanaugh stuff. And I have a lot to say about this because I know a lot. Who knows? I did 6,000 pre-employment screenings a year with my company. Okay. We did them for UPS. That's with the business I was in. I know pre-employment investigations. This is my wheelhouse. Okay. I got a lot to tell you about that. I know some of the people involved were involved with Avenatti personally. I could talk to you about that. But I've been holding back because there's just something that's not right, that I'm not following the narrative here. And I don't even have it on the tip of my tongue right now what I want to say. The CIA connections to Ford are concerning. The fact that no one's taking Avenatti's client seriously when she has all these security clearances. She's pretty much the only one out of all these people who signed an affidavit. She's willing to take a polygraph. Avenatti, they call him the porn stars lawyer. He is a serious attorney. He's not, I think he's wrong about certain things that we're involved in with him, but I think he's incorrect. Okay? I can understand why he thinks there's a legal basis to make a lawsuit, because, there's enough there to try it. Serious minds can have that opinion. Sober minds. But to not just dismiss him and say, poo. We don't want to hear about these gang rapes and there's this drunken behavior and dosing women, and spiking punch. We don't want to hear about that because Avenatti, you're not in the club. Okay. We're willing to talk about these other things. Our friend here who was brought up in a CIA family, we're willing to have her case heard, but not yours. You're not in the club. You're not coming in, Avenatti. You're not allowed in. You and your dirty people. Okay. So I hope I'm making myself clear here. Okay? I believe Kavanaugh is capable of all the things he's been accused of. By looking at his demeanor, by looking at his wife's face of shame staring at him behind him, his weak responses, his hysterical responses. But I believe that we don't know everything that's going on here. I believe that this process has been infiltrated, okay? And from my own personal experiences and other cases like the Sarah Palin case and other things I've been involved in, cases against Donald Trump, that there's a hand here that's manipulating things. So, and Kavanaugh, we know, is an insider who was involved in the Trump, involved in the Vince Foster cover-up. So there's a lot more here going on than meets the eye. We're out of time. So thank you so much. And remember to subscribe to our members section at OppermanReport@gmail.com. And I'll give you a discount. I'll give you 13 months for $65. There's a lot of content in there. It's exclusive. You won't find anywhere else. And that's what keeps the show on air. That's what keeps us able to broadcast our show to you. And you get exclusive stuff that you haven't heard anywhere else. You haven't heard Patrick Knowlton anywhere else. So keep that in mind. If you want to keep this information out there, you can go to OppermanReport.com. You can subscribe there. You can donate there. Or you can contact me directly at OppermanReport@gmail.com. Thank you so much.